What is up, everybody? And in today's video, oh shit, I had the screen recording thing on the screen that I tried to share, so you can see this. It goes like that. Whoa! Oh my god. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to train. So obviously in this channel, I talk a lot about technique. I thought I'd like to cover some of the other very important areas that there are for getting faster as a busy professional over the age of 40. Whether you've got full autonomy over your training program, or you're somewhat involved in a crew and you have some of your own sessions that you plan, this video is going to be about how exactly you can do that so you can maximize your limited training time, row to your full potential without having to waste your your time or risk destroying your health. For those that are new here, my name's Jack Burns. I'm a former GB rower. I'm the founder of Edge Rowing, where we work with busy professionals over the age of 40, getting them rowing to the best versions of themselves. We've been doing this all online for nearly 5 years now. We've got the Edge Rowing's 5th birthday party coming up. But anyways, straight to the chase. So how to train. What we'll be covering is the main areas. So it's going to be long-term plan, weekly structure, zones and weak areas, and then we'll run through some examples of poor, plateaued Pete and poor, burnt out Barb. I realized I didn't close the brackets on these. I don't have that much time to spend making these free videos for you guys, so there's going to be some errors. Anyways, before we do that, I want to get into polarized training, a little bit about what that is and what that means. So I did a whole nother video on this. If I can remember, I'll put the link to it, an intro into polarized training. Basically, it's the idea of doing around, it's not a be-all, end-all kind of percentage, but 80% of your training at an easy, low intensity, and then doing 20% of your training really, really hard, and avoiding any of that mid-intensity stuff, because that mid-intensity stuff, you basically get the same benefit that you would from doing low intensity, but it comes at the cost of producing extra fatigue that, you want certain types of fatigue, but it produces the kind of fatigue that doesn't get you faster. A lot of the time people think it's mainly about low intensity, polarized training, but in reality it is making sure that you maximize your high intensity quality by making sure that the training you do around that is allowing you to recover from high intensity. And when you don't have your training polarized, what happens is you're going along like that, your energy and recovery is like that, you push really hard and then you get fatigued, and the idea is you come back up a little bit higher than where you were before, and then you go down and then you come back even higher like that. That's the idea with training and getting fitter and getting faster. With your when you don't have your recovery managed properly, you do a hard session and then you get fatigued from that, and then because the rest of your training doesn't allow you to recover, you don't come up as high, and then you're fatigued, and then you push yourself down lower, and you can gradually just end up in a position of being plateaued, being burnt out, feeling like you're working really hard. This is the other thing as well. People feel tired. They feel like they're pushing themselves, but they're just not getting the results. This is normally why. There's loads of other training methods out there that work. I just think that in my experience, polarized training is the best for Olympians. It was the best for me. It helped me break into the GB rowing team, but I think it's almost better for people with jobs, people with other stresses in their life, because you're not just short on time to train, you're short on time to recover, and polarized training really helps prioritize that. So there's loads of reasons. I mean, even just some things like after a long stressful day, when you're tired, sometimes the last thing you want to do is get on the erg and rip it as hard as possible. So as I said, I did a full video on this. I'll try and remember to link it in the video. I always forget. But we'll see. If it's not there, just go into my channel and type in polarized training, okay? Just do it yourself. How about that? There we go. Just search it on my channel after you watch this video. Anyways, first step is the long-term plan. So also what I'm going to be doing on this video is walking you through our free resources that we hand out to people, and that we'll be handing out to you. I will remember to put this in the description. So it's part of our kind of full plateau breaker thing. Where's all our free shit? yeah, you can use this free Plateau breaker. It's got all of these resources and stuff like that linked below. You can go and grab yourself a copy. It's totally free. You just have to tell us where to send it. But anyways, I'll be walking you through part of that. You don't need it. I can kind of just talk you through it roughly. But yeah, for the long-term plans, that is basically figuring out when do you want to peak. And if you don't want to peak, then figuring out what you can shoot towards, when you can be in kind of a higher state of fitness, because you want with a long-term plan to gradually build and push and recover and go through phases. And you want to structure that into your calendar. Again, I'll walk you through that in a second. You want to figure out what are your other non-rowing commitments. So this is a classic mistake that I see other busy professionals making, is they think that, okay, I did a hard training week. That's good because I have some travel coming up next week, or work or whatever, or family vacation. I'm not going to be able to, well, I guess a vacation's different. Think about a work trip coming up. I'm not going to be able to train then. So I'm going to push hard before, I'm going to push hard after. And just because you're training less doesn't mean that you're resting more necessarily. So you have to account for these areas in your long-term plan. You also want to figure out what kind of training phases you want to move through. You can have a general approach, and that's fine. Ideally, what you want to do is target your weak areas. So again, I'll run you through that again once we get to the kind of zones and weak areas part. You want to track your data, and long-term planning. One of the big benefits of long-term planning that we found is it gives you a guide and it gives you an objective for the week. Each week will have a different focus, and when you're faced with having to move a session around or miss a session, or you've not got the right equipment, you can look to the long-term guide where you can say, oh, I'm in this sort of week. Okay, we need to move this session to here. Or no, I'm in this type of week. We need to remove this session entirely because maybe the priority is recovery. So what you can do is to make your own long-term planner. Now, the simplest way, so there's actually two things here. There is our free simple load calculator and then our long-term planner. The easiest way that you can do this on your own is just take this load calculator, and for your low intensity that you do, the length of your low intensity, what is the average length of that session? Let's just say your average low intensity session is 40 minutes long. So what you would do is, say you have 3 or 4 low intensity sessions per week. That could be a combination of erging, rowing, running, cycling, any low intensity work. Week 1, you'd want the average mileage for those sessions to be 24 to 30 minutes. Week 2, 36 to 42. Week 3, 42 to 46. Week 4, did I just say week 2 here? Week 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. I can count. 46 to 50 minutes is kind of the rough range that you'd want. And using your data, tracking your information. This is, again, doing this on your own. Excuse me. You want to get to the end of this week and feel like you're starting to get fatigued. And if you get to the end of this week and you're not fatigued, then what I would suggest doing is just nudging that up a little bit like that, and then repeat this process again. And the biggest focus I would say for you is to make sure you get your light weeks. Biggest mistake busy professionals make is they do not structure in rest. And no, traveling for work isn't rest. One day off is not rest. You need to structure rest into your recovery so that you can adapt to your training, absorb it, and then move forward and make bigger steps as you move forward. So I even made a little video explaining all of it here. So I know, like, look, we are so capped in how many people we can work with one-to-one that it just feels wrong to not kind of share some of this information. So, you can see there's Aram's come up and like, fuck off, Aram. He's another YouTuber, a rowing YouTuber. Don't watch him. He's shite. No, I'm just kidding. He has good stuff. Anyways, so specifically, so you can just use this, but what I would recommend doing is go into here and start to structure in, okay, when do you want to peak? So say, you have a 2K, you're going to have to do this on a desktop as well. But say you have a 2K there. Okay, you've got a 2K actually. It's actually a bit embarrassing because this thing's like it's being really slow today for some reason. My Chrome recently has just been super slow. Oh, this is painful to watch. Right, let's just go 10. Let's type it in the old-fashioned way. So you've got, a 2K here. What you would do is always obviously structure in a light week around when you want to be peaking. And then the next thing I would do is say, when are your work trips? So say you've got a work trip starting, the 25th of August, if this fucking thing will scroll. Oh my God, it's not a great advertisement for this free resource, but say you have a work trip on the 21st of August, 2025. That's when it starts, and then your work trip ends on the 31st, whatever. And say it's a work trip where it's going to be really stressful and you're going to be tired. You're going to be doing, maybe it's a big networking event or something. It's a long flight there. You definitely want to make this a light week. And the big mistake you also don't want to make is you're going into that in a heavy week. You don't want to be going into this week massively fatigued. So what I would do, we've got your peak date planned in. You've got your work trip in here. Make sure that you're not doing a heavy week before a work trip. I would go medium. And then once you've got kind of these two things structured in when you want to be peak and when you're going to be traveling, I would work around this to say, okay, when am I going to be pushing? You can maybe use a simple load calculator and start to get an idea. But what I would do is, okay, you definitely want to be tapering here. You'd maybe want a medium taper there. And before that, you'd want to be doing some form of heavy training block. So 2 weeks is a good amount. You'd maybe want to do, a light week in there and then heavy. You'd maybe go medium here. And then heavy again, something like that. And then you have your long-term plan. If you're in one of these weeks here where you say, okay, you have to miss a session, you would go, okay, the priority is a training load. So I'm going to make sure that I move that around, maybe move it to the weekend, maybe add 20 minutes to one session, 10 minutes to another. Say in a light week, you missed a session. Well, the priority of a light week is to recover. So you would just make sure that you, what you would do is you would just move it. You would get rid of it, and rest. You want to get to the end of a light week rested, and trying to move shit around last minute. It's just not, it's not worth it. So when it comes to the long-term plan, so this is kind of a bit of insight into how we work. Honestly, I wouldn't suggest trying this because you can end up spending way too much time on it. But what we also like to do is when it comes to the long-term plan is see how much fatigue someone's building towards the end of a heavy phase like this one. And what you want is just a slight dip in your numbers. You want to start to notice you get slightly slower, slightly more tired. This is the kind of fatigue that you want. You just don't want it to be dramatic drops in energy levels, dramatic increases in fatigue, because that's a sign your loading isn't right. So what we do is we just play around with this loading slightly. We track people's data and figure out kind of what is the optimum amount of load for a person. One athlete I can think of, Kristen, she doesn't have any light weeks because we found that she doesn't need a light week to recover. Her recovery is just really good. So it's kind of generic framework here, but it's going to be better than nothing. What we also do, this kind of jumping ahead a little bit. Hold on. Let's take a break to stay hydrated. When I'm on coaching calls, edge rowing athletes, I'm looking at you. I'm always paying attention I'm not like paying attention for, but I just notice it. If you're on a 30-minute call, you should at least drink water once. So if you've not got any water and you want to stay hydrated, pause this video and come back. Okay, you're back. Right. Cheers. Let's stay hydrated together. I'm going to make sure I don't do that right into the mic so you can't hear me swallow. Okay. Anyways, back to it. In these, what we do when we track data, so the easiest way you can do that, and anybody, I hear people talking about this all the time, you can do basic generic physiological profiling. So many different tests out there. The one I see is getting thrown around a lot is the 7 strokes max. then 60 seconds kind of for your anaerobic power, and then 30-minute rate 20 for your threshold. That's okay. It gives you a bit of an initial start. But what you really want to do is make sure you get an idea of the training that you respond to. So our adaptive bullseye training systems, this is kind of some of the method. This is the method that I spent the last 3 years developing. But basically what we do is we see, when does someone have a randomly good performance, and apparently randomly good performance, and see what training it was that they did that got them to that performance, and then use more of that training moving forward. So it's a way that even when you have an idea of what your weak areas are, you can see, okay, this training works for me, this training doesn't. Because sometimes, even if you're a sprinter, you're really good at sprinting, and you might think you need to improve your aerobic endurance, targeting your sprinting may be the best thing that you respond to. And it's only until you track your data thoroughly, analyze it, similar to the methods that we use with adaptive bullseye training, that you really start to tap into your full potential. Another example, myself, I was never good at sprinting. I was always good at endurance. What we found was that I was better at what I responded to was just endurance training, mainly. Anyways, that's me kind of jumping the gun already, but hopefully this gives you a bit of a framework. If you want the easiest way to do this, if you don't have time to plan in your work trips and all that shit, just stick to this simple framework here. So what else? Other ways that you can figure out when you have good performances. You can try our 10 sessions here where you put in your 2K split. It will give you a target average. If you go faster than that, it can be a sign that you're performing well, and maybe a situation where you would look back on the numbers, calculate exactly what training it was that got me to that point. Anyways, and maybe not look into that too much. Anyways, I feel like I say anyways. I've said anyways like 15 times. I did a maths degree. I didn't do an English degree, okay? You can probably tell that by my grammar, my use of the same words repeatedly, and my spelling. I'm putting on the fan in the background as well because I'm getting sweaty. It's 16 degrees in Glasgow and I'm sweating. Yes, that's correct. So your weekly structure, super important to get this right. A basic framework here is solid. The first thing you want to figure out is how many sessions are you going to do per week. And these examples we're going to run with 6 because that is normally the average that we have with the people we work with. Likely for you as well. 6 days training per week, 1 day off. From there, you want to figure out how much high intensity training do you want to do. Simple answer, do 2 high intensity sessions per week. You can pick from this list here that's in the Plateau breaker that has custom pace guidance. You can, when you're far away from a competition, or maybe when you're going through a really tiring phase at work, you'd want to drop that down to 1 high intensity session per week. And then if you find that you really respond to high intensity, you could bump that up to 3. But one of our physiological mentors, Dr. Charlie Simpson, he's the author of Advanced Rowing. I already covered the title, Advanced Rowing. He says that you only want to do 3 high intensity sessions per week for up to 8 weeks before you really will start to struggle to recover from it. So that's what I would do is, again, we can run through these. I'll run through these in the examples. It'll make more sense. But figure out how much high intensity sessions you want. If you want high intensity once per week, pick any day of the week that you want. It doesn't matter. Sometimes people like to do high intensity when they have less time. During the week, early in the morning. Sometimes people but then they're a bit more fatigued. Sometimes people like to do high intensity on the weekend when they have more time, but they're more rested, maybe had a bit more sleep. Trying to work weights into this. So put it this way, like the fatigue you get from high intensity and the fatigue you get from weights is different. I wouldn't concern yourself too much about it. I wouldn't be concerned if you do weights one day, your muscles get sore, and you do high intensity the next day. Don't worry about it. Look, just don't worry about it. If you want to do it the other way around, again, that's fine. The simplest guide I could give on this is if you're wanting to focus on high intensity and your race pace work, do your high intensity the day before you do weights. If you want to focus on weights and getting stronger, do it the other way around where you do weights first and then high intensity the next day. If you really want to optimize, this is probably the least pleasant way to do this, but I recommend for 6 sessions per week, trying to get your weight sessions in on the same day that you do high intensity, because you're condensing your high intensity fatigue, your high stress fatigue into one day. And then that maximizes the amount of time that there are in between your high intensity and your weight sessions to recover. Another note with high intensity training, try and maximize the amount of time between high intensity efforts at all costs. So, don't do weights Monday, weights Wednesday, high intensity Thursday, high intensity Saturday, because you're only leaving one day in between your Thursday and Saturday. Try and spread those high intensity efforts out as much as possible. Always try and have a minimum of 2 or 3 days between them. That's how you can work in weights. So with 6 sessions per week, if you really want to focus on weights, if you really, really want to focus on weights, you'd maybe want to try and lift 3 times per week. If you want to do enough to get stronger, and which is what I'd recommend for most people, do weights twice per week. If you want to just maintain strength, do it once per week, but doing it once per week is not really going to get you stronger unless you're coming in as a beginner. And if you want to lose strength, don't do any weights. For your weights training, I would suggest, again, trying to cram those weights in. If you're short on time, you can shorten your weights windows to 20 minutes and then join those in with other shorter low intensity sessions or high intensity sessions and get your weights and your aerobic training in on the same day. If you want a focus on weights, doing 6 sessions per week and you're far away from a competition, I would do 4 low intensity or high intensity sessions per week, and then I would do two days dedicated to weights. But that's not the best way to optimize your fitness and your performance, I would say. I hope that makes sense. So, zones and weak areas. So what you want to do is, for your zones, you can use percentages of your heart rate. So that's 65 to 72% of your max heart rate. From our data, we have over 1 million data points now from busy professionals over the age of 40. What we have found is that your UT2, your low intensity heart rate, I didn't really explain polarized training that well. Polarized training is split into 80% low intensity, 0% mid intensity, 20% high intensity. The low intensity, there's about 17 different ways you can describe it. Generally, polarized training is best to think about it as 3 zones: low intensity, mid intensity, high intensity, or zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. There's the 5-zone model, complicates things a little bit. Generally, low intensity, you can think about it as zone 2 and then a little bit of zone 3. There's also other words out there that will describe it. UT2 is the other one. I don't actually know the name of that model for describing those zones, with UT1 and your aerobic threshold, your anaerobic threshold. But anyways, for that, as you age, as you get over the age of 40, your max heart rate drops at a faster rate that your low intensity heart rate drops. So wouldn't it just be super handy if there was a tool on the internet that was for free that anybody could use, and they just input their age and, oh wait, there's the free, where is it? This is a list that I'm not going to share with you. This is all of our free shit. There's our free age adaptive zone calculator. Oh my God. You just put in your age, heart rate, normal resting heart rate, today's resting heart rate, and then your estimate of your 2K and your 5K, and you get your exact splits. Wow. What a great guy. Whoever made that was. You can also get it in the Plateaued breaker as well. Anyways, once you do that, you figure out what your zones are for your low intensity. It'll give you quite a wide range. Again, the best way that you can figure out what your zones are tracking your data, seeing how it fits into a long-term plan. But again, this is a good start, far better start than using percentages of your heart rate or of your 2K or of your RPE. When it comes to, so that's more your zones for low intensity. So when it comes to your weak areas, your physiological weak areas, again, ABT method, adaptive bullseye training, is by far the best method that I've used for figuring out what someone needs to do for their training. But a good start that you can do on your own is do our physiological profile. So 2K PB, 5K PB. The reason I don't like the 60-second max effort. And the reason I don't like the 30 rate 20 as much is because rowers rarely do 60-second max efforts, and they're not as familiar with them. They don't really know how to pace them. And then the 30 rate 20s, again, a lot of rowers use them, a lot of rowers don't use them. So it often doesn't give the most accurate reading. I prefer, for this free resource, to use your 2K, your 5K, and your max power. You know, you put in your splits here, you can see, obviously this is not, it's not, if you go ridiculously out of the ranges, it's going to be inaccurate, but it gives you a bit of a breakdown as to where, you know, your peak power is, if you're balanced, what you need to focus on. So once you know what your weak areas are, you can go into your training and build a phase where you would target at that weak area for 4 to 8 weeks in your high intensity training, and then maybe retest and see where you're at again. And then go at it again and just rinse and repeat. Pretty simple. Again, fitting within your weekly structure and your long-term plan is a really solid way to start to create some results. Examples: Plateaued Pete, burnt out Barb, burnt out Barb. Look how sad they are. Look how sad they are about their plateau. They're just dedicating so much time. They love their rowing so much, but for some reason, they're just not seeing any results. They're stuck, and they don't deserve it. Let's just send some love out to Plateaued Pete and burnt out Barb in the comments. We're all thinking about you guys. Anyways, the example here. So we're gonna have Plateaued Pete. He has lots of travel, but his travel is predictable for his work. He has full autonomy, so he can choose whichever training sessions he does in the week. He only has an erg and dumbbells at home, so he doesn't have a full weights access. What we would do with Pete is, first off, we would do the long-term plan. Then we would look at weak areas. Then weekly structure. Look at how good I'm typing pretty well here. You know when you're typing and someone's looking at you and you just go start going like that? I'm doing pretty well today. I'm proud of myself. Long-term plan, look at weak areas, weekly structure, and then get to frickin' work. So first thing to do with Pete would be go to the long-term plan. Okay, let's just say he's got a work trip coming up here. He's got another one there. You would structure in those rest weeks. Similar before, you would build in that structure there, and then plot in when he wants to be peaking. Once you have done that, let's say in Pete's example, we find that he doesn't have very much peak power. I fucked this because I've just scrolled down so much, but let's try. Okay, anaerobically weak. Let's say Pete is anaerobically weak. However, Pete does not have a lot of weights at home. He just has dumbbells. So what we would do is, if he's anaerobically weak, we would probably plan 2 HIIT per week, and we'd probably do 2 dedicated strength days. One of those hits would be proper anaerobic. Guys, I'm crushing the typing today. Would be proper anaerobic training. So generally that's a work to rest ratio of 1 to 5 or 6. And then I would also do those 2 strength days, even with dumbbells. So he's not going to be working with lots of load here. I would isolate like muscles. I would do like, single arm lifts, single like leg lifts. And then I would also add in, presuming he can move safely, add in explosive movements, maybe plyometric stuff. I'm not a big fan of plyometrics, but when you're short in equipment and you're anaerobically weak, it's something that you can do. And then as he moved on those areas, I'd probably I'd keep the 2 high intensities per week, and then I would do 2 low intensity per week, and then I would do 2 joint low intensity and shorter weights probably is what we would do. Yeah, you do that, you know, he's no longer gonna be plateaued Pete, he's gonna be performing Pete. Yay! I don't know, we can go back to here and he's gonna go like this. Yay, he kinda looks like the Joker. Anyways. Let's go to burnt out Barb now. Poor Barb. So she is she has a very unpredictable work schedule. So maybe it's something like finance, where, you know, you're responding to the markets and out of nowhere, you know, workload doubles. There's late nights. There's very little predictability to it. She also has 2 sessions per week with her crew that she loves to do and she wants to do. And again, most people that we work with like are involved in a crew in one way or another, but the rest of their sessions she can choose. So first thing again to do would probably be so first focus would probably be getting a profile. So probably do testing first, because we can start with a long-term plan. I'll go through what we would do in the case of Barb, with burnt out Barb, is we would start with where she, we would start with what we think would be the best long-term plan for her, because when you can't plan for work, you have to just go with what you think is going to be best, and I'll show you how you can adjust that later. When it comes to the training, testing first. So we would go into the physiological calculator. Again, the best way to get an idea of what training works best for you is tracking your data, tracking your random performances, working back from that, using more of that moving forward. So let's say in Barb's case, her 5K is a minute per 500 slower than her 2K. So again, it's not perfect when I do these exaggerated metrics here, but okay, we find out that that's a little bit more realistic. We find out that she's aerobically weak. What we would do, go into her training, and then we would start to target endurance. So, but first we have her 2 crew sessions. Let's say that is a Wednesday. Wednesday she does HIIT in the boat, and then Saturday is tech. So she's got low intensity on Wednesday, she's got she's got low intensity on Saturday, she's got high intensity on Wednesday. What we would look to do with her 6 sessions would be figure out how we can target those low-end endurance sessions. So it's a little bit trickier because she has the high intensity on Wednesday. What we would ideally like is maybe having Wednesday as a low-intensity session in the boat, but you're building it around your club program. That's totally fine. What we would do is maybe go Monday would be probably low intensity, and because she's so anaerobically strong, you probably just look to do 1 weight session per week. So you could probably fit that in anywhere. Likely maybe where you'd want to do it is maybe the Friday or the Thursday. But anyways, Monday we'd do low intensity. Tuesday, probably low intensity again. Wednesday she has crew. I'm going to run out of room here. Oh, I just scrolled forward. Where the fuck did it go? Okay, I'm going to have to make this font smaller. Hold on here. Hold on, everybody. Oh my god, that's so messy. Thursday, she would do weights, maybe. Well, let's leave that for a second before we sit back and look at it. Weights, maybe. So it's going to be one of these days. Saturday, she has tech. Okay, so she wants to improve her low-end endurance. We need to figure out which day. So she's probably going to be pretty fatigued from this. We're probably going to want to move weights to Friday. So we're going to go weights Friday, and then we're going to go low intensity here. So one little tip I have for you is doing really easy low intensity after you do high intensity is a way that you can work less hard and get more benefit. from it, because you're basically working against a high resistance because your body's so fatigued. So there's actually interesting studies out there that say rowers shouldn't have their off season after their last race of the year. They should do a week of low intensity training after the last week of the race of the year, because there's so much fatigue in their body that they can work at a very low intensity and get a very high benefit from it. So particularly for people who are very aerobically weak, we often really drop their intensity down, really make their low intensity really slow, almost like, you know, UT3. If it's the 5 zone model, it's almost like zone 1 instead of zone 2 out of 5. And then, yeah, what you would do is you would measure this. We'd be looking a lot at the UT2 splits, the UT2 heart rate. At the beginning, what we normally notice with people that are aerobically weak is that their heart rate fluctuates quite a lot because they're just not adapted to it yet. But once that heart rate stabilizes, once their UT2 splits start to come up to where we'd expect them to be, it's a sign that the low intensity stuff is working. And then from there, you'd probably look to change and maybe either make one of these Monday sessions a HIIT session as well, and you maybe add in like short weights or something like that here, and build it from there. And you'd maybe, again, just because you're getting rid of that low intensity there, you maybe do like short, low intensity here. Oh yeah, that's a pretty good way to go about doing it. Very, very rough outline here, but Barb, if Burnt Out Barb follows this, she's gonna be bossing it, Barb. If you guys if you made it this far in the video, comment a name for Barb after she plateaus. That's like what's it called? Alliteration. Anyways, or badass Barb or something like that. I don't know. Recap. Do your long-term plan. Plan around your rowing commitments and don't have brackets randomly in sentences. Create a solid weekly structure. Target your weak areas to find them to respond to, and this will work. You know, there's obviously loads of other methods that we use that help just accelerate this rate of improvement, but I wanted to create this, guys, this for you, so you had a general framework. And then most importantly, get the free plateau breaker in the description. Okay. Cool. All right, everybody, let me know what you guys thought about this longer video. Obviously a good bit different from the usual tech reviews, but important to cover. I just had some questions from people about training, and then maybe we could do one more on, I want to do what I've got one to do on mindset as well. So all the best. If you found this video useful, like, subscribe, you know, all that jazz. Cheers, everybody.